All right, let's bring in Helin Sari Ertem, who joins me now here in the studio. She's an associate professor of international relations at Istanbul Medeniyet University. Helin, good to have you back. Yusuf and I were sort of talking about Turkey's standing in the world we live in today. I'd like to begin by asking you if I could get your analysis in terms of how Turkey's foreign policy has sort of changed over the past century before I get to today.
Well, as I underlined before, it was tough. It was not easy, but it was also full of opportunities. So there were always challenges, but also the opportunities. And I guess Turkey did its best to manage all these crises and challenges, to cope with them at least. And we could carry Turkey up to a certain extent in which this country can raise its voice, somehow represent all those who are oppressed, like Palestine. Like President Erdogan underlined that Turkey did a lot for Palestine. It also represented those who were oppressed in Iraq, in Syria, in some other countries as well. He mentioned those examples from the past, like Korea, that Turkish soldiers' existence in Korea during the Korean War, and also what Turkey did in Cyprus crisis in 1970s. So these were all very significant examples and also crises somehow regarding Turkish foreign policy. But I do once again want to underline that Turkey's success, Turkish foreign policy's success is strongly tied to its ability to somehow manage the crisis and also play for balance of power. So it is a country for balance of power. And this is the most clever way for Turkish foreign policy, because you and your previous guest also underlined all these difficulties that we faced in the past. But the most clever way is to think Turkey like this bridge, the Bosphorus Bridge, as we all witnessed a couple of minutes ago with all this drone show and so on. Being bridge is something positive. So I don't remember anything about negative regarding the symbol of bridge. So bridge is bringing together different civilizations. Bridge is about combining people. Bridge is about moving from one side to the other way. So it is a unique characteristic of Turkey. So I think the next century will be built on this role as well.
The bridge could also symbolize sort of completing the first phase of the journey in terms of the first century and moving on to the second century. Sure. Let me ask you about that. What do you think the priorities will be for this country as it enters its second century as a republic?
Well, it is very nice for me, at least, as an IR expert, to hear the appreciation, the gratitude that our government feels for Atatürk and his comrades, who played a great role for the history of this country, for today's civilization that we have, and the other generations that came after Atatürk and his comrades, and also before these names, so Selçukis, Ottomans, and so on. All these people, all our ancestors did a lot to bring us today to these circumstances, at least to give us the self-confidence to raise our voice and to say that we are also here among the top nations of the world. So I think Turkey's next century will be based on raising its voice in a clever way, representing those who are oppressed, and trying to create a much equal world for the next century, let's say.
Is this the most effective way for it to achieve one of its foreign policy goals in terms of being a regional power? Because it's not just being a military power, which we've seen many examples from today, striving to be a strong economic power, but also standing up for what is right.
Yes, standing up what is right, but in a very clever way, so as to say that you have to keep underlining the significance of peace, of mediation, of compromise somehow, if needed, because otherwise you cannot negotiate. So it's not only about, being soft power, but at the same time a smart power, in which you also need your military power. You may not use it, but it should be there. So today we also saw the show of naval power, Turkey's naval power. And I remember examples from 100 centuries ago in which the United States was trying to show its power with the naval power that it had, which was called as Great White Fleet. So today I remember the same thing. And hopefully this will help today for Turkey to represent itself as a smart power to the world.
A century ago, when the Republic of Turkey was formed, it could be described that it was a beacon of hope for many countries around the world, particularly for the Islamic world, and not only there, but also in the Balkans and in Eurasia as well. Turkey, under this new character that it's trying to adopt, that it's been displaying over the past 10 to 15 years, what sort of beacon of hope is it for other countries?
Well, it's a cast for much equality. It's cast for justice, global justice especially. It's cast for asking for a new world, in a new world, which is represented by a better structure of United Nations, for example. So today's international organizations are not capable enough to represent the whole world. The only thing is not about General Assembly. We have General Assembly of the United Nations, but the United Nations Security Council, unfortunately, keeps vetoing certain problems, certain issues like Israel-Palestinian issue, like applying sanctions to Israel and so on. So these are, I think, somehow damaging the global international, let's say, societies' feeling about justice, international justice. So I think we need to build up a better world by starting with somehow reforming the international organizations like the UN. And Turkey will be a voice for that.
Okay. Helin Sari Ertem, thank you very much for joining us here on our special coverage.